swords and bucklers, a fight begins, but no one dies. Right? In the Franco Zeffirelli film, there's blood everywhere, the prince marches in, it's very terrifying. But in the full text, nobody actually gets injured. They fight until Benvolio enters. And Samson, Gregor, and Abraham, they've got klutzy, heavy weapons. They're swashbuckling. They're just crashing around. And then Benvolio enters. Now, my English teacher told me to remember the character as Mercutio. He's mercurial. He changes. And I thought, oh yes, that's very smart. Yes, I will remember that on the quiz. Benvolio, he's benevolent. He's nice. Ah, yes, I will remember that on the quiz. Romeo, he's near Rome. I will remember that not on any quiz. And Benvolio is not the benevolent character that he's often made out to be. He comes in and threatens people. He's got a faster blade. He's got a longer blade, and he's superior in status. He has a higher class. They can't touch him. So he comes in and threatens people, and Tybalt enters and calls him on it. Right? Tybalt is often portrayed as simply a villain. He's the slasher character. He's a foil. He's the henchman. But he says something really interesting to Benvolio. He says, "Art thou drawn and talk of peace?" And that line often gets skipped over on the way to the very cool sword fight. And I often ignore it, because it involves people talking and not sword fighting. It's not my interest. But it's a very interesting statement. Can you actually be threatening someone and talk about peace? Right? I mean, that's actually a philosophical question that the play tries to answer over and over again. Can you threaten someone with love? Can you make peace through war? So Tybalt comes in and says, if you're going to fight anyone, fight me. They do fight, nobody dies, the prince comes in, and nobody hears the prince. Right? The prince enters and says, will they not hear? Nobody listens to the prince's authority. This is a play in which Shakespeare is telling us law doesn't exist. Law has no power. Passion rules in this world. All right, nobody fights. Shakespeare's living in a time where the middle class is traveling around with swords. They have weapons, they're not knights. They never went to war, they're just middle class living in Italy, they're living in France, they're living in Germany, England. They don't know how to use these or when to use these. The library here is full of books of manners. When should you draw a sword? When were you allowed to draw a sword? Under what circumstances could you kill a man for talking about your sister? Shakespeare seems to look at this and say, this is absurd. So Romeo and Juliet is a play that takes those rules to their logical conclusion. Romeo shows up at a party he's not invited to. Tybalt says, you've shown up to a party you're not invited to. Lord Capulet, do I have permission to kill him? And Lord Capulet says, no, not here. He doesn't say don't kill him. He says, not tonight at my party. But if he were to die somewhere else that was not my expensive party, that would be okay. So Tybalt writes him a challenge. It's in the play. He writes a formal challenge to Romeo. You have offended me. I want to meet you in a duel. Romeo never gets the letter. Benvolio and Mercutio intercept the letter. They talk about how silly this Tybalt guy is. Romeo goes off and gets married. He comes back. He does not know anything about the challenge. Romeo meets Tybalt in Act 3, Scene 1. Romeo knows nothing about how he's offended Tybalt. He knows a totally new way he's offended Tybalt, but he doesn't tell anyone about that. Tybalt says, you need to answer yourself. You're a liar, you're a bad man. Romeo says, no, you don't know me. Mercutio is baffled. Calm, dishonorable, vile submission. He's talking to Romeo. Romeo is the one who's submitting to Tybalt for no reason. Mercutio steps into the play, steps into the fight, and dies. Spoiler alert.
I spoiled that for somebody once.
If you don't know he dies, I don't know why you're at this birthday party. And at this point, the play actually pivots. This is Shakespeare's genius. The play pivots from being a comedy to a tragedy. Because the play began essentially as a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum or the Fantastics. You got two Italian families. They don't really like each other. Nobody really knows why they're fighting, but they fight. You've got a funny, bumbling, randy nurse who jumps around and tells jokes. You've got all these people going to parties, they're in masks, they're falling in love, they're falling out of love. The whole play is just a Roman comedy until the moment Mercutio dies. And then Shakespeare does something really brilliant with our expectations. He set up the universe of a comedy, he set up a world that interrogates this notion of violence, and he says, all right, you think it's okay to kill people? Let's take it as far as we possibly can. If you believe this, let's go down that road. And what happens by the end of the play, the final image of that play, is two fathers standing over the bodies of an entire generation. All the children of the play are dead. One of the mothers has died. There is no one left except Benvolio, who is probably doubling for the apothecary in Act 4, so he's not available. But one of the things that I think Shakespeare's trying to do, the sword fights are fun. They're lovely, they're shiny, they're clangy, they pay a lot of my bills. The sword fights are exciting, they're dramatic. We put them on the posters, we put them on the YouTube channel, it's how we advertise the plays. But what Shakespeare is constantly asking us to do is look at that moment of violence. Is this worth it? The Scottish king, Mackers, starts